We're joined with an absolute weapon in the e-commerce world.
Sasha Karabut.
I help two different types of individuals, people who are looking to innovate a new product and bring it to market, and existing brand founders with products that they want to scale. We've seen brands in our communities go from 0 to $1 million months inside of 12 months. We've seen people go from 10K months to 600K months in 6 months. The biggest corollary to success is speed of execution. They can not get stuck in that kind of paralysis of figuring everything out, and they just move with speed.
How did you keep going then? From 700K to 80K, that's an extreme drop.
There was a lot of doubt during that period. Have I done the right thing? Am I good enough in this space? The main thing that people don't understand is just how horribly bad they are when they start. You are level 0 at everything. No one fucking knows you. You have no database. You're trying to force this thing and every bit of pressure is coming against you. It's going to be the hardest that it's ever going to be. And so the way that you escape that a little bit or hack that a little bit is just...
We're back. This is the Two Blokes One Business podcast with Harvey Rivers and Adam Powell. Today, we're back on a sofa and we're joined with an absolute weapon in the e-commerce world. He's really shaking things up, so I can't wait to dig into his story.
So Sasha Karabut, who do you help and how do you do it?
So I help predominantly two different types of individuals, either people who are looking to innovate a new product and bring it to market using like an e-commerce platform. Shopify is the platform that we use. And then we help them to launch the product into market and then scale it. And then we also do help a portion of existing brand founders that have established businesses with products that they want to scale as well. So those are our two main people that we help.
Yeah, I love it. How did you get into that?
Opportunity came knocking, really. Like that was really it. Like it was just kind of just like I've done a lot of different things actually. So initially how I got into this particular industry is I was doing some like mindset kind of coaching after I had made a whole bunch of money with like my first business which was a hail damage repair business.
Oh yeah.
Made a lot of money with that, and a lot of people were asking me like, "Oh, how did you do this, man? This seems incredible. Like, this is amazing what you've done." And I was like, "Well, all I really did was just like work a lot, and then just like read a lot of books that I never used to do before, and just do like these random like morning routines." And I'm like, "Well, let's just try and like maybe sell this because a lot of people are asking me." And so I started doing that, and I was like, "I don't really like this as much because it's very intangible. I just didn't like the help you think differently and stuff like that." Obviously now I'm like, that's such a big part of like everything.
Yeah, it's massive.
Back then I was like, oh, this is rubbish.
Show me the money.
Has no impact, right? And so I was really looking for something more tangible. I really love the e-commerce model in terms of the expansiveness of it, in terms of like the worldwide application, the 24/7 nature of being able to sell things online, and compared to the previous industry that I was in terms of the hail damage space, the biggest problem that I was trying to solve for, and that was like I was always making money based on it storming, in terms of like there was a hailstorm and then I'd have to fly to a particular location for a particular period of time, then I would make money. And I was like, this is horrible. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I've got to have something with like worldwide opportunity, in like around the clock kind of, you know, and also I'm independent from location. I don't need to be here or there or anywhere. And so e-commerce just seemed to make a lot of sense. And I just really love the idea of like selling something physical where people would receive that tangible product online and they would actually receive that. It's just like, it made a lot of sense overall. So I kind of just like really started to dedicate myself to the space. Had a business partner that we worked with for a number of years, and then that kind of went bad. We can unpack that as well. And then I kind of bought him out of the business and just continued growing the company. So
I'm definitely keen to learn about the dodgy business partner because I'm sat next to one. But e-commerce, right? That's not a world I'm familiar with, I know much about. Since you started in that space, how has it changed to now? I can imagine it's been incredible.
I think the biggest thing that I've observed overall is that people want more and more and more to trust the brand that they purchase from. Consumer sophistication has increased tremendously online. When I first started it in around about 2019, the level that people would go to from like a research perspective or like an awareness perspective before they would part with their money online was a lot lower. Like they'd be like, oh yeah, seems pretty good purchase right now. Also, in addition to that, a lot of what we saw back then was, you know, a lot of this kind of like drop shipping type of a format where people would, you know, plug their business into some Chinese supplier, not really care at all about the particular product they were selling, and then the supplier would ship the product directly to the customer. That was more viable back then as well. Nowadays, I find that people they just demand more quality. They demand something like real. They want to see things in a much shorter time frame. They don't want to wait weeks They want to get their product in 3 to 5 days. So all that's happened really is there's that saying where it's like when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked. And so it's kind of the same thing. You see the people that were operating in like random sketchy ways, and the true businesses that have built real value for the market and for the customers, they are the ones that are remaining now. And it's also like tighten the constraints in terms of like when you do launch a business, it has to fit within a certain kind of criteria or ingredients list to be successful. And that's really what we've worked on developing over the last 5 years.
Yeah, I love the e-commerce sector. Like I've been a bit of obsessed with it more recently. I think that's how I came across yourself. Like I recruit for a lot of the e-com fashion brands here on the Gold Coast. So that's kind of where I got into it. Started researching more, and I think that's where I saw you at the Swish boot camp.
Yes.
And I was like, where do I fucking recognize this guy from? And then I like opened my Instagram later and I was like,
there he is.
There he is. He's sponsored on my Instagram all the time. But the thing that fascinates me about it is the scalability. Right. Me and Ads, when we started Harwell, it was just us two, perm recruitment. Effectively, we can make as much money as our hours or commitment allow us.
Correct.
Whereas what I love with the e-commerce sector and that product selling business, once you've done the hard graft and got a structure set up, it's as much the product as you can sell, as much supply.
Correct. Yeah, we've seen brands in our communities go from 0 to $1 million months inside of like 12 months. We've seen people go from like 10K months to like 600K months in 6 to 8 months. So like the speed of that scale is and they can do it also in a way that's like independent for or it doesn't really require a lot of like heaps of team members, additional structures. Like you can really have like a couple of extra VAs once you have your kind of like supply chain aspect organized and sorted. It's like, okay, cool, just continue kind of feeding the machine in terms of advertising. So scalability is a really powerful aspect. Yeah.
Who are these people? What's the avatar of this type of person who comes in and they're wildly successful? Is there a bit of a pattern and a repeatable?
Yeah, good question. So I find it's really interesting. So I find two different types of individuals. So in the brand new individual who wants to bring a product to market, I find the ones that come through and have tremendous success, they have the biggest like corollary to success is speed of execution in terms of like they can, not get stuck in that kind of paralysis of like figuring everything out, and they just move with speed more than anything else. And then the second thing that I also find in terms of a characteristic would be like extremely high degree of commitment. Commitment to the long-term result outcome, as opposed to like, I need to be successful selling this particular product, and if it doesn't work, it means I'm going to fail. They'll just like, launch this one, get some success, didn't quite work, boom, let's do another one, and they'll just continue going and going and going. One of my most successful clients, perfect example, launched one product, random average success. We niched way further down into a much more specific market. He was terrified. He was like, I don't think this is going to work. This is a crazy idea. Immediately got crazy traction and then scaled to like 100K a month. And it was just like, it's just that knowingness and that trust that like, regardless of whatever circumstances or situations, volatility I go through, I'm going to fucking win ultimately. So from a mindset perspective, I think that's it. And then from a speed of execution perspective, it's just vital for them to take on board new information, action it, and then get new data and feedback, come back to next kind of engagement, whether it's a coaching call or a one-on-one account management call, and be like, great, this is my findings. This is what I've, discovered through that initial test over the last 10 days. Where next? Right? Because otherwise it's like we sit there and it's like, oh, but what about this? But what about that? What do I think about this? What do I think about that? And it's like, well, there's all these variables and you're just getting overwhelmed and you aren't actually doing anything. And then we have a call in 2 weeks and then you're in exactly the same position, more variables, more overwhelmed. Well, what are we doing here? You know what I mean?
It's like,
we've got to, sometimes a bad decision is better than no decision. You just got to move into action. Yeah. So those are probably some of the biggest things. Yeah.
We spoke on our first episode about the kind of the grind, the hustle, and being prepared when you do, if you're an entrepreneur going out, launching your first business, you got to be prepared to dial in and absolutely go for it. With that in mind, and these new people coming to you, they've got to go and pump it hard. Do they need to love and obsess over the product that they're creating?
Not at all. No. And in fact, I find it's a big distinction that I really draw a lot of in terms of like our content and what we talk about. It's like, I share the story in terms of like for myself, when I was first in the e-commerce kind of like model myself, I was like, this ticks a box for me. Like, I'm not like radically passionate about like, this is my product I'm going to sell. In fact, there was a long time where I was really bad at business overall, that I was blaming the industry and the model that I was in. Oh, it's because I'm not passionate about this. And like, no, bad, you're just really bad at it. Yeah, that's the truth. You just suck and you're trying to blame something that's not you. Like, so in terms of like being passionate about something, I think I wouldn't say passionate. I would say like if you have any form of like maybe insider knowledge or insider edge, that can help. You know, maybe if you have some friends around you that can help you to get some content, things of that nature, maybe that would help. Like we have two brands. One's like a fishing shirt brand that sells like these insane, wild, crazy designs.
I've seen them.
I don't wear them. I don't wear them. I sell, like we walked down the other day along the Broadwater there, and there's a bunch of guys wearing our shirts, and I walked down there. I'm like, legends, what's up? And they're like, good day, mate. And they're people that they wouldn't be in my friend circle, but they're my customers. You know what I mean? And I'm like, I don't need to be, you know, passionate about that product. I don't need to wear that product every day myself. But I love supporting the community and offering great products to people, you know, that might be different for me. And all it takes is like understanding of like the product you're selling, the solution you're creating for people, the demographic and psychographic, the gap you're trying to close in terms of what that product actually does for people. And you can sell anything, you know. And the other brand we have is a beauty and makeup removal product. I bought that business from an ex-client and really interesting. We bought it and I kind of left it on hold for a little while because I was like, okay, we need to put a strategy in place for it. I brought some of the product home and my wife was like using just the reusable, not reusable, just the standard single-use makeup cloths, right? You use it once and you just chuck it in the bin. And so I'm like, babe, like you should try this thing. I just bought this company. Like you should see if it's any good. And she's like, oh, I've seen those things before. They're no good. And so
shit, I've just bought it.
I was like, have some faith.
Yeah.
And so, and then what happened was, so she ran out of the cloths that she had, right? These wipes. And she's like, oh, where's those damn things that you bought? Digging around in the cupboards. She found it. And then she's like using it. And she's like, this is insane. Right. And I started using it as well. I was like, well, not that I have makeup on, but I was like, wow. And all of this dirt started coming off my face. And I'm like, this is a really good product. You know, and so like I ran that company for like 18 months before she started using it. I'm not a 18 to 35-year-old woman. You know what I mean? Like I don't have too much knowledge about that. I just know the specific pain points and how to actually, you know, target the messaging into that market to capture the customers. So you don't need to be passionate directly. It might add a little bit of like help if you have some perhaps industry knowledge. Or alternatively, if you've also suffered from the problem yourself. Another excellent example of this client of mine at the moment, he's developing such an epic product. I could give a lot of examples. One guy at the moment, so he's a skateboarder, and so he had a lot of like injuries, knee injuries, ankle injuries, right? He developed this kind of board that has these type of like cork half spheres at the bottom of it. And so it's designed to be like a recovery board. And so you stand on it and you kind of rock back and forth, and it helps you just to repair like your knees, and it helps to repair your ankles as well in terms of all the ligaments and cartilage, right? He was on a coaching call with one of our product team account managers, and they were going over product, different ideas, et cetera. And the product account manager was like, what's that in the background? And he was like, oh, that's just this thing I kind of created to help me fix my knees. And then they were like, you should do that.
Yeah.
He launched it and made like 40 grand in like the first like 2 weeks. You know what I mean? It's just like very unique. He understands it. He understands the pain points. He has viral content that has millions of views. And he's like, oh yeah, that's interesting. Well, that's cool. You know what I mean? So yeah.
It's cool in that you hear of some of these stories and it's like the ones that go the biggest, like the big global brands, they're just random ideas or like almost accidents at times. And it's like sometimes there is no special secret or special sauce.
Absolutely. I definitely think if I was to look at the overarching kind of method, it's if you can align the product that you're actually developing or creating to not be a widget and to be like a problem solving kind of mechanism, that's really where the value lies. The other example I was going to give is I have another client and he has developed this serum, this formula that helps to completely alleviate dandruff, right? In your beard, in your head. And so all of the other products in the market from his research, he's done extensive research for the last like 12 months on this. They somewhat mitigate a little bit of the symptoms, but they don't actually treat and solve the problem. And he's developed this serum where you use it for like 30 or 60 days and it completely removes dandruff. And so he's like 1 in every 2 people apparently at some stage in their life will suffer from that. And so from his research, I'm like, you solve that. I'm like, that's a big pain point. And there's a lot of people that visibly have that issue. They itch their hair. They've got the stuff on their shit. They're like, this is embarrassing. I want to get rid of this. You know what I mean? And so like, I'm like, that's incredible to be able to create something like that. That's real value for people. And it's not just like, here's a lipstick on a pig trying to wrap some, widget that no one really likes and trying to market it really well. It's like, it's real value. Yeah.
It's that thing, isn't it? You're either moving towards pleasure or moving away from pain.
Correct.
What's the biggest motivator? And that'll be massive.
Correct.
You know?
Yeah.
So recruitment, it's an art and a science. To be really, really good and really, really successful, you've got to be able to stick to your process and repeat that and be very disciplined. But you also need the art. It's also people we're dealing with. How can you connect with people, your emotional intelligence?
Yeah.
E-commerce the same, or is it more science-based, would you say?
I think it's more science-based, definitely. Like I look at some of the best kind of like strategists that we have in our company, and they're probably lower on the EQ level and really high on like the IQ strategy and data perspective. If you met them in person, you'd be like, we're having a horrible conversation right now. There's very little stuff, very little going on there. But if we were on a Zoom and you had your camera off and you were showing me spreadsheets, this was fantastic.
They're in their element.
So I don't think you need as much in terms of that. I guess the aspect that perhaps would help with some of that EQ aspect is the marketing side. If I think about like my wife, she's an amazing marketer, and she really understands like human behavior, human psychology that enables her to really, hack into that kind of psychology to help people or ultimately help to market the product. So I'd say from that perspective, understanding things, but again, that can be probably boiled down to a science as well. You could look at the data, you look at the numbers, you test a whole bunch of content, and you can just start to, publish more and more and more of what works. But at some point or another, it benefits you if you have a mouthpiece of the company that's able to present well and communicate well to the potential customers and sell the product. That does help. Yeah.
One thing I'm keen to dig into, we're into our first business journey and we think we're half decent at the moment, right? It's going all right so far.
I saw something recently. Was it like expanding into the US and was it
that's not us. That's Ex-Recruiter. So their business is setting up recruiters like us to launch their own agency.
Got it.
I'm not going to the US.
I actually went home and said to my missus one day, I was like, oh, what about a couple of years in like Texas or the US? And she just went, yeah, I think you should start finding a new partner. But no, you've obviously done some self-reflection. And you've gone, my first business perhaps wasn't working how I wanted it to because you said you were shit at business.
Yeah.
How did you change that? Because now you've got a massive business in eCom Capital and multiple 7-figure brands that you're running.
Yeah. So I think and I say this a lot to my wife, and she always was like, I don't know what this means. It's really confusing. You say this all the time. And then now she's like, there's that one thing that you always say that sticks with me a lot. So I'm like, it works.
Yeah.
And so what I did and what I reflect on in terms of, I guess, the process that I used in terms of initially when I was in as a construction like laborer, and then I transitioned into like a leading hand, I just kind of like look at, I guess, the situation around me and the trajectory of what I'm doing. And I'm just kind of like, I remember being in that industry and seeing all the people around me, seeing like my future. And I'm like, okay, so there's the site manager. He's the next person that I'm going to become if I continue at the same clip. And he had many conversations where he was like, keep doing what you're doing, Sasha, and you'll be just like me. And I was like,
oh shit.
Thank you. Thank you. And so that was very interesting. So I think the way that I've kind of looked at different opportunities or markets or businesses overall is like, what am I doing at the moment? Sum total of everything I'm doing. And I do this on a personal level and then also a professional level. And then if I just like, extrapolate that forward or take that kind of time horizon and just expand it forward. And I'm like, if I continue at this same clip, right? And I continue, all the inputs stay the same, all the outputs just start to increase at the same percentages over a 10-year period. Am I happy with the outcome? Right. And if the answer is like yes, an unequivocal yes, I'm really happy with where I'm going, then I'm like, double down and keep doing what you're doing. And so that's probably like the simplest and the easiest, I guess, way for me to do it. Now, obviously, you got the emotional aspect in terms of how do I let go of something and how do I stop doing something. But from a decision-making framework perspective, that's what I'll always do to just determine, am I going to continue committing to this thing, right? Is it big enough? Does it satisfy my vision? Does it satisfy where I want to go? And am I prepared to continue committing that time frame to get that potential like outcome that I'm seeking? That's kind of the way that I look at different opportunities.
It's a big call to make, isn't it? Did you ever
Huge.
Kind of along the way go, fuck, where I thought I'd be in 10 years and didn't want to be there, I've got this horribly wrong?
That's a good question. So say it again. So did where I would be in 10 years?
In the sense of you're going, okay, I'm looking 10 years ahead. I don't want to be there. I'm going to go and completely pivot to change career. After you made that pivot, did you ever go like, fuck, have I made a mistake here? The
most challenging transition to make was from when I was in the hail damage repair business, right? And I was repairing like a lot of cars. I was like a contractor, service-based contractor. Sometimes I would recruit other individuals and they would work underneath me and we'd kind of repair a whole bunch of cars together and we'd make a lot of money. I think the first 2 years I made like $1.5 million or something in that. It's like a professional services type trade almost. And so it's interesting because it inflates your belief that you think you know what you're doing in business, right? Because you have a PCY LTD, and I'm like, well, I'm a business owner. I'm like, no, bro, you're just good at a particular skill, but you're horrible at running a business, right? And so I went from that particular space to then going, I always tend to take the whole like burn the boats approach, and I don't tend to do like two things at the same time. It's just like jump. And so I jumped into the e-commerce online selling space, and my income went from like, $700,000 a year to like maybe like 80, right? And so for a long time there, I was like, are you sure about this, man? Like, this is like, you have this ego that's up here in terms of where you think you are in your skill set, but your income's down here. Like, something's got to give. You know what I mean? You either got to lower your standard and be like, you're actually not that good, or you got to hurry up and get that income up. So there was a lot of doubt during that period. And there was a lot of like, kind of like internal, have I done the right thing? Am I good enough in this space? Maybe I was just a one trick kind of guy. You know what I mean? Definitely. Yeah. Challenging.
How did you keep going then from 700K to 80K? Like, that's a extreme drop.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple of things to it. So I think I have a couple of different ways of processing things. Number one, kind of like thickly stupid work ethic, where most people are just like, you're out of your mind. Like, why are you doing that for so long? Just quit. A lot of like demons and enemies and people that I feel like I want to prove wrong, that I think, fuel me and drive me and motivate me to do things that otherwise, if I didn't have that, I probably would not go as hard. And then a really, really, really consistent, regardless of the situation, almost naive curiosity to learn, where I'm just like, maybe this is it. Oh, I haven't tried that. Maybe that could be it. So despite being beaten, I'll still get up tomorrow and be like, there must be some resource or something I can learn. Let's study this. And it just gets that little bit of like new information, which gives you a bit more hope. And then you're like, let's try again. So a combination of those things, I would say, is what kind of kept my head above water. Yeah.
I'm loving listening to you talk about this and the passion that's coming through. You absolutely love business. For someone maybe like us, maybe who is in business or about to start it, business is one part of your life, right? You've got your beautiful wife out there. There's other areas. How do you keep balance across all those areas and make sure everything's leveling up together?
Yeah, you just don't. You just don't. No, I don't.
Yeah,
you just don't. Like, I think the thing that I do consistently is, again, just evaluate that kind of time horizon in terms of what I'm doing and where I want to get to, and then I just look at like the sacrifices that I'm willing to make and the sacrifices that I do make in order to get there. And as long as I can sleep at night and I know that, like, I'm having honest conversations with myself first and foremost, I can look at myself in the mirror and be like, yeah, dude, I'm happy with this and I'm okay. And it doesn't matter if I don't reply to your message or don't see you for the next 6 months or don't speak to you for the next 2 years. I'm cool with that. You know what I mean? And I just like, I've just developed more and more okayness with those types of things. And then for me, there's a few, I guess, like maybe like non-negotiable. I wouldn't even say non-negotiables. It's just like things that help me to perform better at what I'm doing. So like, physical health is really important to me to make sure I'm kind of maintaining my physical and spiritual self. But in terms of trying to balance things or trying to keep things like at an even, long divorced from that idea. Yeah. I just don't think it's viable. I think, and the challenge with it as well, I just noticed this a lot, is, so say for example, like my wife and I will sit down and she'll be like, well, we need to spend some time together because like this is the thing that we need to do. We need to hang out on the weekend and spend 2 days together. I'm like, okay, this is interesting. Where's that belief come from? And I'll sit there for the whole period, for example, that we are, together, right? And I'm like thinking about something else, and then she's noticing I'm thinking about something else. I'd rather be somewhere else, doing something else, producing something of value, because I just get so much kind of like, juice out of that whole exchange. And so it creates a worse experience for us while we're there. It also creates like that lack where I could be doing something else and really pushing myself forward. So I'm just like, it's a lose-lose. You know what I mean? Just because I'm doing this obligatory kind of exchange where I'm like, okay, let's participate in this. Let's go to dinner with our friends. And I don't want to be at dinner with our friends. I don't want to like these people. Why? You know what I mean? I'm like, what's the point? What's the point of us being here? And then when you sit there and you have these random conversations about shit that you don't care about, and you're like, what's the point of that? Yeah. And then you're just like, oh, we're supposed to do this because it's balanced. Well, fuck balance, man.
Yeah.
I'm like, why? Why? It's like I get so much fuel out of what I'm doing, and I'm completely aware that it's creating like blind spots or deficiencies in other areas. Absolutely. There's certain areas that I'm like, ooh, like you're going to have to come back and mend that. But I want to develop such like competence and such resources in this level to the point where I can actually like have such momentum where I'm like, okay, now you can have 6 months to redeploy some resources here, redeploy some resources there, and fill those gaps. Because I'm just like, if you're trying to put like, say you've got 100% of your body or spiritual body's energy, and you've got like 20% here in your relationship, 15% here in your physical health, 30% here in your business. It's like, what do you got, bro? You got a whole bunch of really badly performing assets, as opposed to doing one thing extremely well to the point where you actually reach, velocity, and then you're like, this is what momentum feels like. We're actually rolling here. Now I can watch and observe a little bit. I've got some time because I've built up so much capital now that it's given me that freedom of time to look into the future and say, cool, all right, where are the other areas that I need to? That's my philosophy on it anyway.
Yeah, I love it. And even listen to you speak, like it's the way you're laser focused. So it's no wonder that you've had the success that you've had. And I want to dig into what that kind of personal routine looks like today, because I see on your socials that you're always pumping the gym. You seem like you're up and at it early.
Yeah.
But it also wasn't always like that, because we did a bit of research on yourself as well. And your lifestyle wasn't always kind of that up and get it at it.
No. I think, currently what it's like in terms of, I guess, like routine or the things that I do. So at the moment, I usually wake up around about 5 a.m. It's not like hardcore strict and like beating myself up if I don't. I really focus on my sleep at the moment. I'm really getting about like a good solid, whatever the sleep needs to be an above 80 sleep score. That's my metric. I'm just like, once you breach 80, get up and at 'em. And if there's like things that happen that prevent that 80 score, then I'm like, that's all good. You can still win regardless. But usually it's like 80 sleep score and I'm good. And the reason I've done that is because I've tested like, okay, what happens when I'm 70 for a longer period of time towards like 5, 6, 7, 10 days of doing that. Performance starts to shift and starts to lower and lower and lower. And then I need like a little bit of like an extra sleep in for a longer period of time to catch up again. And so I don't want to go through the peaks and troughs. I want to have good, strong consistency. So if I do that for a long enough period of time, I've tested it, it works well. So 80 sleep score, get up, and I typically do about 45 minutes of like reading. And I like to read, books that are complex, that challenge me, that also help me to almost like put rose-colored glasses on for the day and the context of the day, right? So currently there's a book I'm reading. It's called Outsiders. It's about the top 8 Fortune 500 CEOs that have created the most shareholder value in history, outperform the stock market by something like 200%, some ridiculous magnitudes, right? And so just listening to and really divulging in the stories of these individuals and how they perform, how they make decisions, their strategy, and then you kind of plow that into your mind for the day. Regardless of what happens, you can't help but just be like, ooh, like, how can I think like him? How might I be able to borrow that philosophy in my decision making today? Very, very, very helpful. Then what I'll do is I'll usually have a block of around about like 4 to 6 hours of just like work, and it's always focused on the biggest problem or the biggest thing that I'm trying to actually like alleviate to help the company to grow. Right, so from say 7 a.m. ish, right up until about 12 midday, is just a focused block on just quiet, no notifications. I have a timer on my desk. Put the timer on, take my phone out of the room, and I'll just work on my laptop with just like one single focus. Whether it's building a particular like new workflow for services to be delivered, whether it's developing some kind of financial model, whatever it might be. It's like I'm only doing this one thing for a consistent block. Then I have my PT session, go to the gym, do about 90 minutes of PT, 60 minutes of PT, and then get back, cold plunge. And then I do usually like afternoon of somewhat, communication, human focused meetings, etc. Simply because I'm like, I don't need tremendous levels of like brain power, brain capacity to sit there and be like, okay, what's the situation? This is the situation. Where's the performance at? This KPI. Okay, let's do this. You don't need to sit there and like really think with your highest degree of like mental faculty to solve those problems. So that's kind of the current structure of my day. I'll run that through until around about 5 to 6 p.m. Then typically I'll switch into any other form of like creative learning style things up until usually about 8 p.m. That's kind of current situation.
Fuck, you are a machine, mate.
Talking about that, that's exactly the same kind of science-backed approach that you've got in your business as well, it sounds like.
Yeah.
In terms of how you analytics and the using
it's just testing what works, because I used to get up and go to the gym in the morning and do like, cold plunge and shower and this and that. And I'd be like, start work at like 7 o'clock. And I'm like, bro, this is like 2 hours you've just lost. And a big credit to Hormozy on this. And it really broke my belief, because for a long time I was like, morning routine. And I'd wake up and do like 90 minutes of meditation and stuff. I do these long meditation rituals. And don't get me wrong, I still do that. It's really good. But I just don't think it's a corollary for me to be successful in the day. It's not like, oh, I didn't do my meditation today. Must be a bad day today. It's like, it's not required. You know what I mean? Whereas previously I was like, oh, I didn't, do my cold plunge and I didn't get my meditation in this morning. Oh, I'm really scared. I'm scared about today. It's gonna be. So come on, man.
Yeah. So if I'm an entrepreneur, like sat ready to go, sat on a business idea, want to launch it, how important is that external stuff that we just spoke about, like lifestyle, the reading, the books and whatnot, and podcasts? And is it something you also cover as part of your course?
I don't think it's as important as what people give it merit. I think that it helps, but I think like the main thing that, similar to what I mentioned earlier about like myself, like the main thing that people don't understand is just how like horribly bad they are when they start, especially like you are like level 0 at everything. You know what I mean? And I always like liken a business, especially getting a business into some form of like movement. It's like it's like you're birthing something, and this is an interesting subject being all men here, but it's like you're bringing something to life, right? And so it takes so much like force, and you're going against like the extreme like reverse conditions of the entire market where everything is pushing against you. Like you're trying to launch a product. No one fucking knows you. You have no database. You have no data in your pixel. No one knows a single thing about anything you're doing. It's like you're trying to force this thing and every bit of pressure is coming against you, right? And so it's like, it's going to be the hardest that it's ever going to be. And so the way that you kind of like escape that a little bit or hack that a little bit is just to do more time in the thing. Like it's the only like hack or system. It's just like spend more time doing it. And all that happens is you learn more because you spend more time, and then you gather more information. And then because you learn more, you start to take different moves that help you to accelerate at different levels than the person. And I always, ever since I started my my hail damage repair business, I used to apply this exact kind of process because I would watch all the individuals around me, and they would, for example, work, Monday to Friday. And so with that, just to put some context, with that particular business, right, you would repair cars, right? And so like what happens is you set these kind of lights up on the cars, and then the hail damage gets dented on the panels, and then so the lights kind of illuminate all the dents, right? And then you use all these instruments and tools to like massage underneath the metal, all the metal back into like the perfect form, right? So it's very manual, and you need to be very like, sharp and precise, right? And so what would happen was, and you make a lot of money. Some guys make like 20,000 a week, 30,000 a week doing this thing, crazy money, right? And so what happens is, guys, they go and they work a whole week, and then they would get to the weekend and be like, fuck, I just cashed out this week. This is amazing. Spend money on the weekend, go and party, go and do things on the weekend, come back Monday, performance is down, slightly hungover, a little bit all over the place, right? And just like their earning goes down, and they have a shit week, right? And then they get to the next week and they're like, I'm going to work really hard this week, I'm going to come back, right? And I just observe this happening, and I'm like, okay, so number one, I'm starting out in this industry and I'm pretty bad at it, right? And so what's the hack for me to, get good quicker? And I'm seeing these guys just go like peak trough, go to the, club on the weekend, get drunk, wasted, come back, underperform. And I was like, I'm just going to work for 7 days straight until I am really good at this. And so for like 2 years, I just worked for, 7 days straight. I was working about 100 to 110 hours a week. And I was like, I just want to get good. I just want to get good. And it was such an interesting thing because like when you're doing that, I was also like, saving more money than I ever would, because I'm like, there's no time to sit there and be like scrolling on social media. Oh, I love that freaking jumper. You know what I mean? I'm like, you got no time, dude. You literally work until 9 p.m. at night. You go home, you have some freaking something to put in your mouth before you go to bed, shower, sleep, repeat. Yeah. It's robot life. You know what I mean? But like in terms of producing results, again, and what I said before in terms of sacrifice, whole lot of sacrifice. Right, my wife's like FaceTiming me. She's on some boat and she's like, "It's Australia Day, babe. Wish you were here." And I'm like, "Yeah, sorry." It's just like part of it.
How do you manage that in a relationship?
I think from what I've seen is it's an exchange of what you say you need to deliver, because the failure that happens in relationship comes when you as an entrepreneur kind of like, commit to saying these things, you proclaim these things that you're going to do or who you're going to become and what your business is going to do. And then you don't deliver, right? And not just that you don't deliver, but also you don't even put the work in to deliver. And so what happens is, if I reference back to my dad, lovely guy, amazing individual, really, really intelligent. But if I think about what happened in terms of his, I guess, supporting our family, worked really hard, right? Didn't earn enough money to support the family. So it's like a double negative. You're not there and you don't provide enough money, right? And so what happens is, in relationships, I think every exchange with my wife over the last, we've been together for 10 years this year. It's been me making sacrifices, making big bets and big, bold commitments, and then having the actual follow through commitment, regardless of how long it fucking takes, to be like, you got to know this is actually going to happen. Despite her doubting me and being like, you're downright crazy. I don't think you should do that. I'm like, fucking watch it.
Yeah.
You know? And so I think that's what makes it okay in relationship, because the only thing that I believe that females get very, very uncertain about particularly is that their safety, right? And so like if you're saying you're going to do something, right, you're going to go and make this big kind of amount of money, you're going to go and commit this stuff, you're going to sacrifice time away from me because that's where you help me feel safe. And in addition to that, you're going to take our savings, which is the resources that keeps us safe, you're going to commit it to something. And then on top of that, so I'm not going to see you. We're going to be less safe because we have less money, and it's not going to happen
because you're not doing the work.
Because you're not doing the work. Holy shit, get me out of here. You know what I mean? And so I think that's what actually creates issues within relationships. And the alternative of that is obviously when you do commit to it, you do follow through, and you just bury yourself with commitment until you actually make it what you said you were going to do, and then they're like, okay, I kind of trust this guy. You know,
that's it, isn't it? It's having that end goal and that end vision and saying, yeah, this is a sacrifice now.
Correct.
But here's the trade-off that in line.
And you got runs on the board now, right? How many times have you said, I'm going to do something, I've done it? And now she goes, fuck, I know you're going to go and do it. Right,
Correct.
Crack on.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, like when I first went from the construction industry to the hail damage, she was like, you just getting this promotion. You've got a company car now. Like, it's amazing.
Come in a car, mate. That ruins dreams, that thing. The amount of guys I speak to don't take a new job. Oh yeah, but I've got a ute. Fuck, mate.
I've got a ute now.
Jesus.
It's crazy. Yeah, but I think in terms of the relationship aspect, that's what helps. It doesn't make it easier whatsoever, and you're still going to get a lot of like friction and a lot of heat, particularly if they care about you a lot. You know, but I think that's what makes it worth it, and that's what helps them to buy into the vision. And they're like, I think ultimately, like, especially like, you know, long-term partners who are with you, they want to always check and validate, like, can this guy still keep me safe? Yeah. I know you could do it a few years ago. Can you still do it now? Right? And so they're kind of like, you know, respectful kind of chatter or kind of, you know, testing you in terms of, you know, stay home, or you're doing this, or come and relax, spend time with me. They're like, is this guy still serious? Has he actually fucking got me still? Or is that little fucking goal died in him 2 years ago when he had a little bit of success? You know, so it's constant. Yeah.
We know a few of the same people through kind of Swish, and then Harry Singer as well was on stage. And one thing you mentioned earlier about spirituality and energy, it's kind of a world I'm dipping my toe into a little bit. I'm not that woo-woo yet, but I reckon I'll probably get there. But I can feel it on the kind of the universal level, right? What you put your energy into, and if you kind of decide in your own head, this isn't going to fucking fail. I'm going to make this work. Things just start to come into place for you. The world just kind of responds, right? Talk to you about your spirituality, mate, and how you found that impact for you.
So full context. So when I was growing up, my dad, my dad is, and I think he still is anyway, Hare Krishna, right? So he's like Russian Orthodox and practiced like, you know, very, very, very intensely like this Hare Krishna kind of religion. And so when I was growing up, I thought it was the dead set weirdest thing in the fucking world. Like I'd have friends over, and then my dad was like walking around the house in like a sarong with like beads and stuff, and he'd have like the stuff on his here, and then he'd be out doing breath work and yoga on the veranda at the back. And I was like, oh my guys, let's just go out the front and get away from that man. Like whatever's happening out there, just pay no attention to. And so we were like vegetarian. There was no meat in the house. There was no eggs in the house. It was like very, very, very interesting. And so I grew up in this town with like 3,000 people. And so everyone in that town, like it's like steak, Vegemite, peanut butter sandwiches, you know what I mean? Farming community. And you've got this like interesting family that are religious with a religion that nobody has ever even really known before. Mum used to like pack these like insane like sandwiches with like garlic sauce, all this stuff. And I'd be like, man, I can't stand this.
Who is this?
Please just let me be normal. And so I guess like, I guess the exposure to like spirituality probably came somewhat by extension of the association and seeing that, as much as I was always like, I never want anything to do with this. This is the weirdest thing ever. I think maybe it left a few seeds in my mind. And then I think what happened was initially, as I started to So I never really read a book or never read anything in terms of personal development-ish until I was probably 25. I was like, books are for nerds. I don't believe that, they're necessary. My brother used to always read Harry Potter when I was younger, and I used to tease him about it. And I'm like, I was like, there's no utility of those things. So dumb, right? And then so I started to read, Tony Robbins' content when I was like in a really, really, really challenging point in my life. And it started to like help me. And then I started to transition a little bit into like the power of now. And I was like, okay, cool, there's this thing. I talked about this on the podcast with my wife and I a week ago, 2 weeks ago. The biggest shift for me spiritually came when I was like listening to The Power of Now. If you haven't listened to that book, amazing book. And so it was a very interesting shift where it was like, I disconnected from my body. I was this awareness that was not me. I'm like, okay, interesting. So there's my thought, and then there's everything else that comes after that. And they're not the same. You know what I mean? It's not completely locked in like this, like just meat suit that walks around through the earth and just like follows like directions randomly. I was like, that was the big kind of like opening up for me. Since then, I've done so many different things in terms of 7-day long meditation retreats. I've done like 5-6 hours of like breath work. I'm always looking, because I've done a lot of like psychedelic things to test and stretch the mind as well. And I find it interesting because what it does is the weirder you go in that area, the more closer to like peace and oneness that you feel. And I think the sense of happiness that you can develop, some of the most happiest, like completely okay, at peace with like world, life, anything that potentially exists, closest to God is me like in a meditation, doing a breath work on the floor for 45 minutes. And I'm just like, I could melt into the planet right now with how completely like okay I am if I was to die right here. Everything's at peace. Everything's okay. There's bliss all through my whole body. And I'm like, I'm good. You know what I mean? And it's very interesting because it's like the things that I pursue within my life and business are external, but then I can, shift and go internal and be like completely okay in that moment as well. So it comes with so much like, I guess like healing and peace to know that like despite needing to or wanting to pursue these things, at any moment I can switch and be like, you got all you need right now. That's a little bit of my context on spirituality.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
And you talk about your struggles, and I know I can definitely relate to that because I think I've found my kind of real performance level through going to the bottom in the sense of having some really hard times. And that's what kind of hitting the bottom was when I was like, okay, I need to really turn things around now and make something of life. Do you think that, you have to find the bottom to kind of really excel in life?
I do, but I don't. Like, I think the bottom is an interesting thing. I think I don't think there is a bottom. Like, I actually don't. I think that everybody reaches a level where they make a decision that this is enough. And that's about the extent of what the bottom is. I don't think that there is any, and the reason I say this, so I've got my younger brother, and he has been, consumed by drugs and stuff for probably the last like 15 years, right? And you would observe there to be numerous bottoms, right? Like jail time, multiple children in the family, like so many things that would have been observed from the outside and be like, surely that's it. Surely the first kid, that's going to do it. Surely losing the job again, financial ruin. Surely like this accident happening in a home invasion. Surely that's going to be it now. No, deeper and deeper and deeper. So I think there's a certain level of like, there needs to be extreme pain, absolutely, but there also needs to be some kind of like burning desire to actually want to improve, right? Because I think something that happens in that, bottom pit of despair is people just turn into that kind of like, that they lose all hope, and they're just like a victim of their circumstance. And I think if you don't have that hope that the future is better than the past, then it's dangerous, and then you just stay there. So I think it's a combination of like really extreme pain, also combined with like some belief, some hope, some desire, some like, fuck it, like there's something out there that's better than what is. But the pain is a very interesting relationship. I really obsess about it a lot because I experienced a lot of pain, but I also was probably really naively narcissistic in thinking that like somehow I'm designed or destined for more than what I'm in right now. Somehow, and that bigger belief, albeit completely unfounded on nothing at all of like actual evidence, prevailed, and it forced me to actually take different actions. So yeah.
Where did that come from, do you think? That feeling of, I'm meant for more than this, born with it or developed it?
I think where it came from was not receiving kind of like, this is interesting because I thought a lot about this, and ultimately I think back to like my childhood, and I'm always like, I didn't get the recognition or love from my dad ultimately, and I think a lot of the behaviors that I exhibit right now in my life and business are ultimately being like, I really wanted, and I maybe still do want him to be like, son, you're crushing it.
Bit of a chip on the shoulder.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like, it's just me wanting to be like, just say something, bro. You know what I mean? Just give me a call and say, I'm really proud of you.
Yeah.
I think ultimately that's where it's come from. It's me trying to prove something to somebody, which when you say it out loud, you're like, that's really dumb, man. But I think similar to what I mentioned before, Patrick Bet-David, a mentor of mine, he's big on, enemies, and he's big on like, having something or somebody or this source that you're fighting against in terms of like, I want to overcome this adversity, or I'm going to, win against this crusade against this individual or this person or someone that's not believing in you. It's pretty powerful. If someone's sitting on the other side of that table and they're like, yeah, we just, we're here to make peace and make impact. And that guy's like, I'm going against everything. Like, one of those people are going to win and they're going to do whatever it takes. And the other guy's going to be like, all right, that's enough for me now. So yeah.
It's finding your drive, isn't it? Like, we know the things, me and Ad's are super competitive. Like, we're ex-pro footballers and it's like finding what really pushes you. And I think in business, in your career, if you can really find that and drive into it, that's where in now, like today's day and age, you can outwork 90% of people out there. And I think if you can really go and sustain that and keep that consistent, you're going to take the piss.
And I think the thing is as well, it's like a lot of people, I hear this a lot when people like challenge me about like how hard I work or how much I work. They're like, you're going to burn out and stuff. And I'm like, I've always found that the moments that I've come close to like burning out or feeling like, oh, this is a lot. What happens in those moments, I've always become disconnected with like the big vision, and I've always like lost sight of like the big picture, right? Because when you do get very, very focused on like the minutia and the detail and like the what's in front of you, there's a lot of like limited resources. You're dealing with like, this is in front of me, I need to fix this problem, I need to solve this issue, like that person they're doing this thing, I need to fire that person, and it's very, very like, it becomes in and in and in and in. And so like when you focus on like, where do I want to be in 10 years? Like, one exercise I did a couple of years ago, which really transformed my thinking and my energy, was just like, I was like, thinking of like how I could cut and scrape and manipulate and massage my, business structure to be more efficient, right? And I was like, stressing me out so much, and it was so like limited in thinking, so scarce in thinking, and the energy that I was like in was always like fear-based energy. Not enough. There's not enough. I've got to cut this. I've got to cut this. Always. And so the book 10x is easier than 2x. I read that book and I was like, interesting. So if I was to 10x my personal income in 12 months, what would that look like? And I was like, well, that's a big number. And even as I'm talking about, like, you look up and you kind of like, you're like, oh wow, it feels different, right? You're like, what would be possible? Oh man, it's giving me chills just thinking about it. I was like, holy shit, I want that. You know what I mean? It's like, let's solve for that. And like, where's all the energy that's available to you when you solve for that outcome? It's very, very, very different in comparison to like, oh, cut,
Can you have that level of drive and determination and ambition? And I'm sounding like a bit of a wanker here, right? Me and Harvey were kind of self-made, which is a bit of a wanky word, but I think it's very true. Like, we didn't come from money. Sounds like you didn't either. I moved over here at 19 from England, literally just a backpacker. Skinny, spotty, didn't have a clue about what world was going to be. But I always knew I was going to get there. Yeah. Whatever there was, whatever it looked like, I'm not sure. But I always knew at some point, I'm going to go, fuck, I made it. I did it.
Nice.
Can you have that if you've had the silver spoon, if you've been handed the start, the introduction, whatever it might be, do you think? Or have you got to just find it within you and do it yourself?
I think it depends. So it's a different problem. I was having this conversation with a friend of mine recently in terms of the problems that you would be alleviating for your children. I think about it a lot now because my wife and I want to have children this year, I think, right? And I always think about, so what are the things that I'm going to provide, my son or my daughter with that are going to be completely different to what I had? And like a lot of the, I guess, like resource management, resource allocation, resourcefulness in terms of being able to like, start anything from scratch, pick yourself up by your bootstraps. I probably don't want, my kids to do that. They don't need to necessarily go through that again. But I think the role model nature, and I think that the problems that I want to help them to solve is going to be like capital allocation. Where are you placing your time and attention? Networking, right? Who are you connecting with? Who are you networking with? Because just by design, like this, it would make no sense for you to take your son or your daughter and then be like, okay, well, we're in this position, socioeconomically, and then I'm just going to put you down here to suffer and start from scratch. It's like, it's just a different problem to solve. So I don't think necessarily they can, or I think if you, for example, give them everything and screw them up, then that's a problem. And you give them that kind of just nothing needs to be worked for, everything's given, everything's granted. But I think the challenge more so becomes like, how do I show them the skills or help them to develop the skills so that they can carry on the legacy? And I do think you can have maybe not the same level of do or die level of commitment that you might have when you start, but I still believe you can have a pretty savage work ethic. Soon to be tested, but
we'll check back in 15 years.
Yeah.
It's a game changer. I've got a little girl. She's just over 2. We've got another little girl on the way. And in terms of business and output, you're a machine now, and the day and the output that you've got, mate, you find another couple of gears. For me, it gave me a different outlook, a different driver on life. And when you were talking then, a quote came to mind of, it's not necessarily the person you become when you hit the goal. It's the person that you become along the way that you fall in love with. I know for me, I dialed in, I sorted my lifestyle out, and I just started to achieve. I wasn't making promises to myself every weekend. I'm not partying this weekend, and you go and fuck it up, and you feel shit on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you go and do it again. The person that I've become on this journey because of the goals that we've got, that's the person that I've kind of fallen in love with, rather than when, our end goal of being sat on 10 million, whatever it might be. It's the journey. Yeah. I 100% agree. I think it's interesting because a lot of the time, people are always and I think you have to be outcome driven, but at the same time, it's it really is, you know what I mean? It's the peak is so tiny, and you reach that small little moment. You're like, wow, here we are. And then you're back down again, or something happens, and you're on some other kind of just rip and raw. You're just like, wow, this is a challenge. So I think embracing the suffering, embracing the hurt, is so necessary for you to survive in the game. Yeah. And if you're anything like us, it's the ever changing goalposts, right? When we started this business, $1 million GP in year 1 was the mecca. We wrote it on a whiteboard, road to $1 million, and we were like, fuck, how good if we did that. Amazing. And you did it, and you just by the point we were like, yeah, awesome. Yeah. And the next goal's 5 million, and then 10 million. So it's just when does it stop?
I do think though, celebrating the wins is very important. I recall a really interesting moment, a moment of a lot of despair. So there's another book by the same authors, Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy, and it's I think it's Who Not How, I believe it is. And I think he talks about it in that book. Maybe it is in 10x is easier than 2x, but they talk about this process of at the end of each day, writing down 3 wins, and then just being what are 3 projected wins for the next day, right? Yeah. And so I was like, oh, well, that seems like a really interesting kind of habit to do at the end of it. I've been doing it for about 2 years now straight. And the first night, I remember I did it. I sat down in my bed, and I was like, all right, cool. I had just worked 14 hours, and I was pull my phone out, pull my notes out, and I was and I sat there for 15 minutes. I couldn't think of a single thing that was a win. And I was I just started crying. I'm like, what do you, this is really strange. I'm you're sacrificing everything. You're burning yourself so hard. You're beating yourself up so much, and you can't think of one single fucking thing that's good. I'm like, bro, you're fucking pathetic. Right. And I forced myself to start writing these did that, woke up and did that, things that I was oh God, really? Is that a win, bro? Really? And gradually, you start to really enjoy the process, and gradually, your reticular activating system starts to look more at the next day and be oh, well, there's that thing that you said yesterday. Interesting. Well, that's a good way to actually experience today. And it's been really, really, really helpful. Really helpful for me to increase my happiness levels on an average basis. Massively helpful. Yeah.
You're so right. You just get caught up in the grind, and you think the work you've done, it's going to pay off, right? Because we're optimists, we're driven, we know it's going to work. It's going to pay off. Okay, what actually? The 3 things that have worked. What do I want to? What's going to work?
But it's also because you're measuring yourself always against the future versus where you've come from. Always, I'm always it doesn't matter what result or what outcome. You're always yeah, but that guy's younger than me, and he's making 40 times more than me. I'm still a loser. You know what I mean? It's always, and so you could be as successful as you ever want to be, and you still like find something to beat yourself up on, or find something that's like not good enough. And the other part to it as well is I've also, there's one other individual on my team, and she used to be like, I don't know if Olympic level, but she was very, very, very high level professional athlete, right? And so she has this very similar complex where she just, if something's not perfect, if something's not done incredibly well, she misses her KPI by a few points, like she gets down and down and down in the dumps, right? Like very bad, beats herself up unbelievably. And so I always, have this somewhat joking but somewhat completely serious conversation with her where I'm like, you just need to accept you're going to be very dissatisfied at life. You just are.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, sorry, it's kind of the curse that you have by having the massive desire to get to where you want to go. It just means that until you arrive there, and knowing that when you arrive there, it's never going to be anything. You're going to be like dissatisfied. You're going to find things. You're going to criticize everything. You're going to see issues in people. You're going to find flaws in every single thing around you because it's just the nature of your design. And it's like, okay.
It's a fine line, isn't it? I think it's a trait of very, very successful people, those relentless standards and goals.
Correct.
But at the same time, you fall the other side and you just live a dissatisfied life.
But that's exactly right. It's like, do you really want to be, ignorant in everything and just, bum around and not really have anything and be kind of like blissfully happy?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's also that curse of information where it's like the more you know, and I think they've done studies on people with like the higher and higher your IQ gets, generally speaking, the more unhappiness you experience because you just know and understand things so much more, and you're like, bad. It's interesting. It's super interesting topic. I thought we were here to talk about e-commerce. I'm joking. I love this stuff as well. It's awesome. Yeah.
I do want to touch back on e-commerce and just think about the journey now. I've started my business, right? I made a couple of sales, right? I've got the product in my hand. I'm so excited. How do you go from, $1,000 a month to 10 to 30 to 100, which I know is essentially the pathway that your business provides people?
The first, say for example, I would say $1,000. I would say 1,000 to 10,000 is probably like the hardest because there's a whole bunch of like testing different variables, and there's a lot of potential things that just don't work. Right. And so once you're starting to make, your first, say, for example, $10,000 a month, you have some data. And the strategy that I always like to deploy in this case is like the data is the thing you're actually optimizing for and not the cash, right? You're not trying to like make your first 10 grand and make like $3,000 profit and be like, man, that's sick. I'm going to go buy some Gucci loafers. Like you're just trying to get data as quickly as possible so you can optimize, right? And so once you have, for example, your first $10,000 a month, it's mainly just a situation where you're kind of refining your creative, which is the main driver of most of the traffic to your site, for example, identifying a few of the key creatives that are working well, just doing them a bit better, and then optimizing your product page to just improve the conversion of your product page, making sure that's a little bit better, and then just increasing ad spend, right? And those are the two main things that you want to focus on initially until you probably reach, say, 30 to 50K a month. Then you probably want to start looking at like, okay, so what's this thing called email marketing, right? And how can I actually start to, send more emails to my customers on the back end so that I can increase my profitability of my business further and then generate more sales on the back end. So those three things are majority of like the focus within that, like, $10,000 to $100,000 a month. And you can do exactly that just with one single product. You don't need multiple SKUs. You don't need multiple different products. So many people get really lost, confused, and they chew up a lot of time and money by, launching one product, getting one product to say 10, 20K a month. And they're like, oh my God, I've like hit like a ceiling, or like I've hit like, there's not enough customers, and they start launching more products. And so more products is just more complexity, and there's more things that could go wrong, right? You got like different SKUs here. It means different products. It means like different product pages. It means like different content to drive for those product pages, just more complexity overall. And so like, if you think about anything, when you start something, I always want to optimize for the least amount of complexity and the simplest and easiest to attain the goal, right? And so like that's always what we kind of advise and structure our clients around, is like, let's fix for one thing, solve that thing really well, drive traffic to that thing and be profitable. So in terms of, I guess, like the structure, that's the main approach. A lot of the time it's from 0 to 100K a month. It's honestly just assuming your business metrics are good and you're making money. It's genuinely just like increase ad spend.
Yeah, well,
Like assuming that things are actually, we get traction and sales are coming in reasonably consistently. The main thing that people are just very scared to do, and sometimes they just need someone's like hand on the lever to be like, now you're spending $1,000 a day.
yeah.
Literally, it's like, we're going to do this together now. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, come with me. I've done this 100 times before. Let's go. But it's scary. You know what I mean? Like you see your bank account getting debited and you're like, wow, I'm spending so much money on ads. And it's like, yes, but just wait and watch and look at the data. And now we're improving so much quicker. That's probably a big thing, yeah.
So where does it go wrong then? Because it sounds, I don't say easy because it's definitely not, but it sounds straightforward, methodical, process-driven. How does someone fail to go from 10 to 30 or 30 to 100?
I think what happens is from the things that I've observed the most that send people down the wrong road and have them spiraling into nothingness is, so similar to what I mentioned before around like the process. So for example, 10K to say, for example, 30 to 50K, it's just like ads and product pages, product pages. That's it. Like if you want to do a few other things, you can do it, but like just that's it. Right. And so what happens is it really messes people up is they go, all right, so I'm not making any money yet, or I'm making $1,000 a month. I'm going to set up like these really comprehensive email flows because I really think that I'm going to start nurturing my customers when they start to become customers. Oh, there's this interesting upsell process. So when people come through, like I can maybe start to get more sales from each sale. Interesting. I'm going to start exploring this. Oh, there's actually this AI, chatbot I can install onto my website, and that's going to communicate with all of the 3 purchases I have every fucking day, right? And it's that, right?
Yeah.
Because there are so many things that you can do, and they're all fun and they're exciting, and they feel like you're making progress, right? They start doing them, and they actually slow down growth, and they start to actually like inhibit people's ability to actually scale. Those are the biggest things. And then in addition to that, I would also say supply chain management. Right, because like as you're making 10 grand a month, 15 grand a month, you have like small MOQs, you have like small supply chain issues. As you start getting bigger and you start ordering larger amounts of stock, you also like perhaps have the necessity to order larger quantities of stock. And so for example, if you miscalculate how much stock you need, you're not really good at projections, you're not really good at being able to analyze like forecasts for sales, or alternatively, you have a whole bunch of product because you developed a lot of product when you should have just had one, and then you overorder on all these redundant SKUs you don't sell, and the next thing you've got all this stock that's sitting in your garage and you're like, well, I'm not even selling this stuff anymore. And that's just your money on the floor, collecting dust. So a combination of those things are some of the biggest problems, yeah.
That's what I picked up on when you were kind of talking before. It's just the simplicity.
It has to be though. I feel like the human brain particularly is just always looking for the new thing. And you're always like entrepreneurs 101. It's like optimistic. Oh my God, that's a great idea. It's like, no, bro, it sucks. We should just continue doing it. 99% of the time, it's like that. Like the optimism will actually kill you sometimes, especially when you've got a reasonably good thing going on. It's like if you just put your blinders on once you've actually reached that traction, and you just bury yourself into it, you'll probably crush it. But usually it's just like, we should do that. We should do this. There's another agency. They're going to do my content. This person's going to do email marketing. I found this consultant to do this product. It's like your attention. It's like the finite thing that you only have a limited amount of. And once it's gone, it's gone. It's your attention. Yeah.
I love it. I feel like there's so many takeaways, whether someone wants to jump into e-commerce or just business in general.
Right, massive.
There's some gold.
So what's next for you, Sasha? You've done loads. There's loads going on right now. Have you got capacity for more? Are the goals getting bigger and scarier? Like, what's next for you, mate?
Yeah, definitely. So at the moment, there's a couple of things we're working on. Our BHAG at the moment is to have one client every hour make their first $10,000. That'll work out to be $81 million a year in new clients generating that result. That's awesome. Our 10-year target. End of this year, we plan to have one client every day reaching that target. We're at one client every 6 days at the moment in terms of new people in the community making their first $10,000 in sales. I also, for the company collectively overall, I want to be able to influence $1 billion annually of sales. Wow. So that's what we're working towards in terms of like new sales and then existing brand portfolios that we build into our company as well. That's kind of the big target that we're working towards within the company. So yeah.
That's huge.
$1 billion for that.
It's exciting.
So
yeah,
good.
It's super exciting.
How do you get those kind of displayed? Do the team know about these? Are they on a big scary whiteboard saying $1 billion, or is it not that?
Yeah, no. I think values or principles or these like leadership tactics are only as good as what they are integrated into your company, you know? So if it's kept within the founders and only the 2 founders know about it and maybe some of the management team, it's like, it's completely redundant. And so we're very, very big in terms of, so we, our entire team read books every single day. And then so inside of our morning huddles every single day, the team will, similar to the exercise I mentioned earlier in terms of reading the book at the start of the day, it kind of sets that rose-colored glasses. So at the moment, the whole team are reading the Ritz-Carlton New Gold Standard book, which is a Ritz-Carlton's book they've developed around like service in all their Ritz-Carlton hotels. And so we've got all our CS team, all of our sales team, all the operations team, reading these books and implementing the strategies throughout these books into their days, right? And demonstrating how to actually like, we've implemented something recently whereby we, every single member of the leadership team will contact 3 of our clients on a weekly basis for a feedback call. Every single person, finance controller, he does it, tech guy does it, because we want to, engage on a personal level and really understand who our clients are and understand their pain points, understand their challenges, understand feedback they may have on a level that's not just like, okay, well, some data on a spreadsheet suggests that this is happening in the community, right? It keeps people very close to you, and it has you never forget with like, well, this is what we're doing here. I actually speak to these people on a daily basis. Like the integrity and the level of service we need to provide to these people must be upheld. So those are a few ways we do it. We have so there's daily huddles, there's weekly end of week leadership meetings. We have a monthly town hall with all of our entire company on that. That's contractors, VAs, offshore, onshore people, all the employees, leadership team on that meeting. Usually about 40 to 50 people on that team once per month, which are a complete company-wide update of every single department. Always go over and particularly structure into our core values out for the company, our vision for the company, the BHAG for the company, where we're at in terms of the BHAG, what have we done in the last month to actually get us towards that position, any of the key learnings, resources, books that we're reading as a company at the moment, takeaways get shared from that. So it's about trying to like integrate that as much as possible into the team members and into everybody in the company. Otherwise it's like you might as well just leave it on the book and not even talk about it. Like it's a waste of time. Yeah.
I reckon we're on the right track, mate.
I hope so. I should have got my notebook out.
It's recording, you idiot.
Fuck, I hope so.
It's a fucking podcast.
I hope so, mate. You set it up. But seriously, mate, thanks so much for sharing a bit of time with us this morning. Like I know I've been sat in my mind, just been blown by the takeaways you've given, mate, your energy, your drive, the passion, your story. Mate, you've been an incredible guest.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it heaps. You guys are excellent hosts and amazing conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.